Welcome to another edition of Poetically Correct. One day, he's your big brother, calm and collected. The next day, he is cold. You're both walking home from school. What's wrong, Ricky? You mimic Mr. Lee and his rap song while beatboxing, but he doesn't laugh. One day, he never allows you to say anything bad about anyone. But now he's asking for it, your list of demands and names. Putting his fist into an open hand so hard, strangers across the street stop and stare. One day, he mentions why you can't come in. There's a mad punk in the house. He screams, he keeps dissing her. You say, disrespected or disappointing? You listen to his lyrics about living on principle, about respecting women, about his promises. One day, he tells you to make pledges of your own, to stand up on your own too. He gives you a pen and paper. He says you need to write something to replace the old. The next day he is. My name is Venus Jones, and that was a poem I wrote called One Day. And I'm sitting here with McTate Stroman II. He's going to join me in conversation, and we're going to talk about whatever it is he wants to talk about. First, I have to ask you, what did you get from that piece that I just read?
Wow. Definitely sounds like a piece you wrote based on someone who was really close to you. And one day, you mentioned he helped you to stand on your own too. And what do you mean by that?
You can take it two ways. And McTate, I know you have another poem too that I'm hoping you'll share with us today. And when I say he helped me stand on my own, he was like my brother. His name was Ricky.
Right.
And when he was like a big brother to me, and I was like 15 or 14 years old, and he passed away when he was 16. And it changed and rocked my world. It's the reason why I became a poet. And when he said stand up on your own too, it meant he wanted me to stand up on my own 2 feet, but it also meant that I had to stand up too, like stand up also.
Yes.
Like he was standing up.
Yes.
And that is why I became a poet, because he told me to write. He wanted to do so much with lyrics, and he wanted to be a writer and a poet and a real MC.
Right.
And he was really, this was at the time when, it was like 1990, man. This was like hip hop was taking a turn, and it wasn't about family and black king, black queen anymore. It was turning into something different, mainstream wise, and he noticed it.
Right.
And he also was noticing some domestic violence at home, and we both didn't know what to do about it. We were kids.
Right. And especially when you're dealing with domestic violence, you're dealing with situations where you don't have a voice, and learned helplessness.
Yeah.
And I can imagine through your pen that you found power in that, where you had some control.
Yes. And I found a sense of control, and I got a chance to take my power back with the pen and that paper that he gave me.
Right.
And it did give me a straighter spine, and it did make me feel like, wow, I can, have a voice here even when I feel like I'm part of the voiceless.
Right.
And still to this day, if you know my work, really know my work, I dedicate another poem in here called He Can Hear Me. In my first book, She Rose on a Journey from Girl to Goddess, and I do feel like he's part of my muse family. He has been a muse for me. Right. So when they say rest in power, for me that means a lot of things. I mean, we may feel powerless in this realm sometimes, depending on what kind of hand we were dealt, whether it be an issue of strikes against us, whether it be race or gender or orientation or whatever. But we know that in the afterlife, there's more power, and I think he definitely sends power in through my pen often. Definitely. So I thank God for that.
Yeah. That piece moves me. It reminds me because my sister did that for me.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about it.
She helped me find
a poem. You got a poem you want to share?
Yes.
Poetically correct poem on this thing.
Right. let me put on my spectacles and it goes something like this. You are the image of strength, laced with femininity. Your focus of reality moves me to be the potential me you see. You set the pace. Welcome me to this place, this space, and watch from jump rope to hopscotch. You even taught me how to deal with the bullies on the block. There's so much I owe to you. As a little man, you taught me how to stand on my own too. Through creative stories and the pictures you drew, you turned our inner city blues into colors of new hues. I'm saying you turned our inner city blues into colors of new hues.
Wow.
A constant confidant. My older sister, who wore beauty so nonchalant. Of course, I was devastated when my guardian angel's wings got clipped. I questioned the universe and her meaning of it. Lord knows I cried. Why? My sister gets sick by unknown virus called encephalitis. It made no sense. I'm saying we had already survived the ghetto, the gangsters, the pimps, the puppet masters like Geppetto, and moved to the mountains right next to the meadows. Then you get bit, sick, by a mosquito. Now I've come to grips with my own meaning of it. Your coma, a cocoon. Because in the darkness of night, there's still the light of the moon. Spirituality sought and God found. And the world continues to be blessed through her artwork now. Because you are the image of strength laced with femininity. Your focus of reality moves me to be the potential me you see. Yeah. So to me, it was like my sister would always, even in the repetitive part, you see a potential in me that sometimes I don't even see, you know, and you were very feminine, but with strength, you know.
Now, is your sister, what's her name?
Her name is Antoinette Tony Stroman.
So is she still alive?
She is still alive.
Okay.
She got bit by a mosquito when she was 16 years old as well. And unfortunately was misdiagnosed, and the doctors, you know, wrote it off as another young ghetto youth on drugs, and it wasn't the case, which through the medicine and the treatment they gave her caused her to be in a coma for 6 months, at which time her heart stopped and caused irreparable brain damage.
Wow.
So she's nonverbal and
but
confined to a wheelchair.
You feel like she speaks to you?
I feel like, yeah, I definitely, her presence, her essence, and that's what gives me energy to speak and do poetry. So it's a
so
real
this is
reason.
how you became a poet too?
This is how I became a poet.
Okay.
You know, I've always been a creative person, but yeah.
But because I remember you reading this poem to me, and I remember that part. That's why I'm so glad the synchronicity of it all, that they both helped us stand up on our own too, even though they may not be able to do what we do.
Right.
Like the way we do it.
Right.
But it's so insightful to me that you could have this beautiful tribute to her, and obviously did her illness had an impact on you.
It did. I remember being in a room. I love sitting in the dark because I don't see any boundaries. And I remember being young and saying, God, why me? Like, why my family? Why we gotta go? Why me? Why me? And it came back like, why not you? Like, who would you want to put this on? And I wouldn't want to put this on nobody. So it's like you take ownership of the situation and you see what we've learned from it and through it. You know, it made my whole family grow. You know, I always find it's one thing when you deal with disabilities. You know, if you're a person is born with a disability versus a family who happens to have a disability happen in their household, and then you become a part of that community, you see it differently, and we rose to the occasion.
Wow, you definitely rose to the occasion, and I'm thinking about my brother. When you say that, I have a brother that I grew up with. See, I was adopted, so I have like at least two families. But when I think about disability or physical challenges, I also think of a brother of mine named Ryan, who has cerebral palsy, and he taught me so much of a sense of patience and a sense of humility. Right. That a lot of people don't get the blessing to have. They really teach us how to love.
They do. I remember, my sister's ailment, brought us all to many different hospitals, many different rehab facilities. And for me, since I was still young, I get bored. And I would always float through the hospitals and peek in and talk with people, other kids that were there, And so I've always had lots of friends with quote unquote disabilities. But the biggest thing is to focus in on the person's ability and not focus on their disability. And that was one thing that I learned. Seeing people with cerebral palsy, right? You have to have patience for your body. Like, what you want to do, but your body is doing something else. I used to be a test proctor for a disability program at the community college, and seeing students who, mentioning cerebral palsy, I had one student that was doing like some calculus test, and I couldn't even do that by myself, but to watch him patiently wait for his hand to come back to control marking the test. I'm like, wow, that's on top of a calculus test. I'm like, if he can do it, there's no excuses for able-bodied individuals.
And it does give us a sense of hope, and I think that for me, just having people around you that remind you of that everybody has a gift. You may not be able to see it. I was just watching a video today of a little person, and the kids who were like 7 to 8 years old are taller than her, but she wanted them to know that she had a husband. She was tall too. And so again, we don't let all of these different challenges bother. But she also mentioned bullying with them, and like, now that you've met me, would you bully somebody who was a little? And it put them aback. Like, wow, now that I know someone like you, of course not, because in this short time you can make an impact on somebody's life. And I'm hoping that you all know that McTate is my brother, and he wanted me to hear about his biological sister, and I think that's what I look forward to working with you more, because I feel like we both have a lot in common, where how we kind of came up in the world and what our path is. But we took this road. It's a road that's, as Robert Frost, another poet, would say, a road that's rarely taken, or the road not taken.
Yes. Very
rarely. But it's a different type of road being a poet. It's not always easy, but it's a road that I wouldn't trade.
You know what that reminds me of? An anonymous quote that I read from the back of a Public Enemy cassette tape, and that was, "Freedom is a road seldom traveled by the multitude." And I remember being young and pondering on that.
Freedom. Let me say that one more time, because and I gotta wrap this up in like 30 seconds. But freedom. Say it one more time.
Freedom is a road seldom traveled by the multitude.
So on that note, let's get free.
Yes.
Let's take that road that's less traveled. Let's look for difference and the diversity and the beauty that it will add to our life. And so I encourage you to leave some comments below on this podcast. Send in a poem that you dedicate to your brother or your sister, or someone who has been like a brother and sister to you. And this is Venus Jones, McTate. We out.